get started. So did everybody exchange your cards for the trinkets downstairs for the party tonight? Everybody all set? All right. So I'm going to talk about Apex 5.2 preliminary new features. We don't have much to show yet. We're still in the very early stages of our 5.2 cycle. Has anyone here not been at the Sunday symposium? Quite a few, okay. So on Sunday we had like the whole parts of the Apex team show off a number of 5.1 features and give some previews on what we're working on for 5.2. So I'll repeat some of those points and add a few more. I'm not going to talk about a release date for Apex 5.2. We are not allowed to do so, and we don't actually have a release date yet. Just briefly myself again, I'm a senior development manager in the Apex team. I've been with the team since 2002. Started working for Oracle in Germany in '98 and moved to New York in '99 and still live there. Anyone here not on Twitter? Okay. So Twitter is very important because that's where we do important announcements like, let's do this one. All right. All right, so Apex 5.2, that's our patch release to 5.1, just got released. It's available for download now on OTN. And the patch set can be downloaded from Oracle support. There you go. Huh? Yeah, please. Go ahead, download. All right, so with that out of the way, safe harbor statement, the most important slide in this slide deck, because I'm just going to talk about new things. And, well, we covered the 5.1.2. So that's available now. And for 5.2, we have a statement of direction on OTN. So if you want to read up on what we are planning to do, go to our OTN page, and we have a statement of direction there which we keep up to date. So everything, as stated in the safe harbor statement, is always subject to change. But those are the main features. Go ahead.
Tell us what's in the new version, 5.2?
No, I cannot. The patch set has, well, it's always bug fixes, right? So we're not introducing new features with patch sets. There may be some packaged updates here and there, but there isn't anything new in that sense. There are release notes. Let's see if they're all here somewhere. Well, when you download the zip file, or it should be here somewhere. I don't know if we don't have it online yet. Yeah, probably right. There you go. Ah, very good, thank you. So this is what's new. You scroll down, and we separated out the interactive grid-related bugs from the regular bugs because our focus in 5.1.1 and 5.1.2 has been to round out the interactive grid feature. So to better keep track or enable you to see what's changed, we list the interactive grid-related bug fixes first, followed by everything else. And the patch set is always a combination of the previous patch and the new patch. So when you download 5.1.2, you get everything that was in 5.1.1 plus 5.1.2. All right, so statement of direction, that spells out what we plan to do in 5.2, and it's all subject to change, right? We always want to do a lot. We can't do everything. So if anything changes, if we change our scope, then we'll reflect this in our statement of direction. And in this session, I'm really looking a little bit for feedback on some of those things, right? This is basically our statement of direction. The new Create Application Wizard, interactive grid and page design enhancements, all the REST features, remote SQL, REST service consumption, and the new REST workshop, package application updates, and a number of other smaller features. After each section, I will do a brief Q&A. Not too long, but just to kind of not save all the questions towards the end, so we can talk about these things as we go. All right, let's start with the new Create Application Wizard. This is actually something that you can already try out, at least in an early version, on apex.oracle.com. And that's my local instance. And I have a version of this new wizard installed on my local instance, which is 5.12, which is a slightly updated version, which will come out soon on apex.oracle.com. So this is an early version of this new wizard. In 5.2, that wizard will replace the old create application wizard. Right now, there are a few things that will change once it actually moves into 5.2. For example, right now you can only build applications on the universal theme. But if we want to replace the old wizard, then we need to allow custom themes or versions, custom versions of the universal theme to be used with this as well. So this will be extended to support custom themes as well. If you do pick a custom theme though, let's pick another icon. There you go. If you do pick a custom theme, then some of the options won't be available, right? This new wizard provides you with a number of features as well as page types. Some of these page types are very basic, like a blank page or a calendar. They will work with custom themes just fine. Others, like a filter report or this master detail down here, they may not work with custom themes. So based on the theme you pick, you'll have different options. Let me see if I can make this bigger. Well, clearly, this is not the right resolution for this. Should I keep? The wizard is too tall. Even if I go full screen. All right. So what this wizard lets you do is similar to the old create application wizard. Create an application, add pages. Some of these pages are a little bit more advanced. So let me just add, for example, this filter report. This is going to be on, oops, sorry. It's very tiny now, is it? Yeah, I'll do, can I do control minus on the other one? All right. So I think it's probably better. And I did not want to be in this workspace, so let me just briefly switch. And then let's try this again. All right, new create application wizard will take the place of the old one. It enables you to, I'm going to stick with that UI. I'm going to call this demo. Now let's see if I can make it smaller. And I can, but I can, oh, it's never mind. Okay, all good. Going to add a blank page. And then I'm going to add one of these newer pages, like a filter report page. And you'll see in a moment what that is. And I'm going to build this on my, let's go with the demo projects here. My title is going to be name, description, and I would like to have my project lead shown, and I want to filter on name, description, and project lead. So I can just keep building out this application. For example, I can build master detail pages, and this wizard has two types of master detail. One is more of a read-only modal dialogue kind of wizard, which I'm going to create. And then we also have the editable grid, interactive grid. So you'll be able to have this style of master detail as well. I'm going to go with projects again for my master, name, a description, and my detail table is going to be tasks. All right, so that should do for now. Well, actually, let me add one more page. I want to have one of these dashboards. And what's nice about this wizard is it has built-in sample data. So if you're not quite sure if that's the right page type for you, just create it, take a look at it. It creates it with some sample data. And later on, you can go in and modify this to your actual tables. So the next, or the biggest change really in this wizard is that this wizard lets you create complete features. Like on Sunday, I talked about packaged applications that I showed you how you can add like access control or theme style selection and features like this in your packaged applications. This actually enables you to add these kind of features into your own applications. There was a question in the back?
Yes. So are these features available only at the time of application creation?
Excellent question. So right now they are. It's an extension to 5.1. Our goal is to allow some of these features at least to be usable, or to enable you to create them on existing applications, as long as the application was based on this initial wizard, right? If it's a 10-year-old application, probably not going to work. But some of these page types, some of these features are actually going to be more advanced page types. Other features like access control, for example, may only work on new applications. So it's going to see which ones are going to be falling into which category. But the goal is certainly to enable much of this for existing applications as well. I'm just going to pick all the features. There are things like access control, which I talked about on Sunday, an email framework, theme style selection. You can have notifications. You can get feedback from your users. So a lot of common functionality that you might want to use in your own applications. I'm going to change my prefix down here to make sure I'm not colliding with any previous attempts. And I'm going to create this application. So what happens now is similar to the old create application wizard. We're going to create the metadata for the application. We're also creating a few database objects. Some of these features have their own tables. And then we should be good to go. Just give it a moment. There you go. So there's my application, and it actually has 25 pages. So pretty substantial application, and I can run this. Well, there you go. So I have a blank demo page. I have this filter page. So here I'm getting like all my projects shown in these cards, and I can actually filter on things like I only want to see projects where the project lead is this guy. And then it's filtered down to only this one person. Or I can filter on the name, or type something up here. So I can very nicely just filter my report. Then we have this master detail. Master detail shows me my projects here on the left, then more details on those projects on the right, and underneath I get my task, my detailed task. So this is one form of master detail, right? I can go in and I can edit my master project in this Popover Dialogue. I can also drill down here and edit my task. As an alternative, you could also have created this using interactive grids. Then there's this dashboard. That's the sample data that I talked about. And then under administration, you find all these features that we discussed before, like the access control, the theme style selection. All these features can be found under the administration section.
Will the blueprint feature be customizable so that we can, for example, change access control to make it more complete or based on something else?
I don't think that's the intention. You can always go back in later and then modify what's been generated, right? Like I guess the blueprint for access control is not something that's modifiable before you create it, right? You go in later on and change it. So the application looks good, but of course it could always be better. So I could actually go back and, well, either start modifying it, or I can actually go back to the blueprint and pull this application back out. 3 minutes ago, this is the one that I just created. When I hit this load button, then all the selections that I just made are being restored, and then I can try again. Or I can remove pages, add additional pages. I can also actually look at the blueprint and then look at this JSON-based representation of the blueprint. And I can use this to actually modify it and create additional pages. I can copy this a few times. And I'll probably mess it up. No, I didn't. And then you get more of these. So you can pull back your previous attempts, modify them further, actually edit the blueprint, And I have this one sample blueprint, which we call one of everything, because that pretty much creates you everything that you can do with this wizard. It's a bit longer, but let's see what it does. I'm going to take that. I'm going to stick it into this blueprint window. And then I'm getting a fairly large application. And let's see how that looks like. Create application. And while that is doing its thing, just a few comments on this progress bar. We're not actually submitting the page in a traditional sense and calling this create API. We actually have an AJAX callback on this page. When you hit the button to create the application, then we are initiating that API call via AJAX. And while the thing is doing its creation, we just pull the status every second or so. And based on that status that we're getting back, we are drawing this progress bar.
Marc, what happens when the application already exists? Is it overwritten or is there a warning?
It's a new application ID, so it's, you can create as many versions as you want to. If you pick the same ID, then it would tell you that ID already exists, but it doesn't really check whether this has been created before, other than checking the ID.
Is there are we able to access this JavaScript API from our code? Send your blueprint stuff to the database to create all this?
Not yet. We had discussions on going that direction, but it's good feedback. If that's something you find useful, let's talk more about it. So this is what I just created, a whole bunch of things. There are calendars, there are card reports, there are charts, there are versions of this filter report that we talked about before. There are some interactive grids. So pretty much everything that you can create with this wizard has been created out of this blueprint. So I think that should do for this feature. So just to recap, it's available on apexoracle.com. We're going to refresh it to the next version fairly soon. After that next version, we're going to move things into 5.2. And then it will become the new Create Application Wizard for 5.2. Replace the old one, support custom themes. And our page wizards are also going to be updated, at least a little bit, from the UI standpoint to match the look and feel of this wizard. On Sunday and during the week, we talked a lot about low code. This kind of goes a little bit into that direction, and this apexoracle.com/low code talks a bit about that some more. So it's good to read and kind of gives you some insight what our goals are with this wizard. We talked about the features, so the goal is to at least allow some of these to be usable for existing applications. We'll see which ones specifically will work in this way. And we talked about the blueprint. It's in JSON format. The JSON format is going to be documented. And yeah, you can look at it. You can modify it. You can very rapidly add additional applications and generate your applications through this syntax. So any more questions before we move on about the Create App Wizard? All right, so then let's talk about interactive grid enhancements. And there's a lot that we are planning. Not everything is going to make it into 5.2. We know that already. Our goal in 5.2 is to further focus on the editable tabular form replacement use case. Eventually, we want to replace interactive reports with interactive grids. Of course, we need to support all the features of interactive reports before we can do that. So it's not going to go away in 5.2. It's probably not going to go away in the next release after that. But over the next release or two, the plan is to iterate interactive grids towards the same set of functionality that interactive reports provide. And once we reach that goal, we'll provide a migration path for you to migrate your interactive reports to interactive grids. But in 5.2, the focus is on rounding things out and then add these kind of missing features when you compare them to interactive reports. And some of those are, well, I guess interactive grids, I think most are familiar with those by now. They are similar to interactive reports, provide similar search and filter functionality, sorting, providing multiple views. But unlike interactive reports, they allow you to edit your data. So you can double-click on the fields and actually edit your data. So they are very much like tabular form in that sense. But you can have multiple of those on a single page, which allows you to create these kind of master detail style pages. So now for, whoops, wrong direction. For what we've planned, things that are missing are group by view, pivot view, card view, computation. So group by and pivot, you know from interactive reports. So we expect those to work in a very similar way. Card view is a new view that we're considering for interactive grids that matches the kind of card views that we've seen in this blueprint application that we just created. And computation, of course, are also something that you know from interactive reports. You can add computed columns that compute combined values out of other columns. So we want to add these to interactive grids. We also would like to add subscriptions and some, I guess, UI changes, being able to actually turn off the stretching of columns. A lot of customers ask for that. You set your width and you want to stick to that width. You don't want your interactive grid to stretch over the whole page. And similar, the row height interactive reports, they just wrap around and show you long text. Interactive grids do not. So we want to enable that as well so that you can have formatting that is very similar looking to interactive reports. Yep.
My question on subscriptions, will that be implemented basically the same way that it is for interactive reports right now, or are you looking into enhancing that a bit?
Leading question, huh? No, we're definitely looking at enhancing. No, I guess we need to match what's there, right? That's the minimum requirement. And of course, with everything we do in interactive grids, the goal is to make it better, right? You've seen like our filter dialogues being somewhat different than interactive reports, and likewise, I would expect whatever we can make better to be better. But no specifics there yet. All right, two things that are not there yet, but frequently asked for: URL-based filtering. So you put your IG row filter up in your URL, and you have pure SQL APIs that you can use to set filters and perhaps pull up the query that was executed. Both features are available for interactive reports and should and need to be available for interactive grids as well. There are also some performance enhancements or helper functions that we are considering to require initial filters and to allow column filters to be required so that we're not executing any queries unless those filters are set before. Documentation, John talked about that during his session on Sunday. So we definitely want to and need to document our JavaScript APIs. We always talk about how our jet charts and our interactive grids have so many functions, and we only expose a subset through declarative options and point to the ability to use JavaScript APIs to go further. Of course, for that to be viable, you need to have documentation and support for these. Once we reach, I guess, the level of features that interactive reports have, we'll also provide a migration utility so that you can migrate your interactive reports to interactive grids. And of course, in 5.2, our focus is on these REST features, remote SQL and REST service consumption. So the goal is to enable those kind of data sources for interactive grids as well. Then copy down something that John has already demonstrated on Sunday, being able to move some data from one row further down. Some dynamic action enhancements to trigger events based on, for example, when the interactive grid is saved. And also being the client-side expression evaluation, being able to have your aggregations and computations be updated based on data that you might be editing on the client. And then we're also looking at having a few new item types, two of which are a simple checkbox, similar to what you have in tabular forms that would look like a checkbox and perhaps even be a checkbox in navigation mode. And then the other one is the autocomplete item type for normal forms and interactive grids, which we needed to update because the old version that we have is based on jQuery migrate and other dependencies. And now that we're upgrading jQuery and Jet, we need a new component for that. And we're looking at the Oracle Jet input search component as a basis for this new item type. All right. That's interactive grids, please.
Any plans for validation, to be able to do validation on interactive grids?
You can do that today. Yeah, you can have just normal validations on interactive grid columns. Well, let me do a quick sample. Interactive grid is one of our sample applications, and that actually shows a lot of these features. And I'm pretty sure many of those have validations. Oh, yeah, validation. So there's my interactive grid. And when you look at the implementation of this interactive grid, you should find a few validations over here. Hire date in the past and commission limit. So those are validations. For example, this one here. Let's make it a little bit bigger. Commission is null or to number, and well, some complicated math that's put in place here. So when I go back to my interactive grid.
Question is about multi-row validation.
Pardon?
Question is in tabular form we use array for multi-row validation, which is
Well, it validates every row. Like you make changes, and all the rows that you touched that were changed will be validated. So when I hit save, let's see. Computation commission must be less than 1.5 times salary. So there's an error, and I can go in and fix this error. So whatever row I touch, the validation is executed. And with tabular forms, I've seen over the years, like all these loopings through arrays. You don't do this with interactive grids, and you don't have to do this with the old tabular forms either, right? Even the old tabular forms supported these style of declarative validation that are automatically being executed for every modified row. So there's no looping through any arrays necessary, neither here nor for tabular forms.
what about the client-side validation? Is there any plans for that?
Well, there's already quite a few capabilities to have client-side validation, so you can, I guess, have your not null but your required check in here. And I guess the way you submit an interactive grid, or really any page in Apex 5.1 and up, is that you submit your page, but you only reload on success. So as long as there are errors, the page isn't reloading. So you see your errors being shown as if it were a client-side validation. Many validations do require that you validate on the server side, right? But I think the objection to server-side validation typically is that you have to reload your page. That's not happening here. It's not happening for normal forms either. You submit it, you get your errors shown, you can fix your errors, and then once it succeeds, it reloads and moves on.
In terms of replacing the autocomplete, is there a plan on supporting both display and return values, or is it only going to autocomplete whatever you plan on displaying? If you look at like the Twitter type ahead / down, you can use the display and return.
I don't know.
What would you recommend if you're saying in tabular form you don't want to go through the loops? You wanted to validate your screen from one row to another before the save?
It's the same as with interactive grids. So you can have normal declarative validations just like this. You can in fact even do like a is null whatever validation declaratively. What's important there is that you make this a validation that, where's that going? That's tied to the region. Editable region validation? Yeah, that's the one. I was confused because the region name is validation. So, yeah. So, same with tabular forms. You have a tabular form, you create a validation, you pick the tabular form region as as a reference, and then you can just have a normal validation like this one is null, is date, all the declarative validations without you writing any loops going through X, G, F1, whatever.
But if you wanted to compare the value of one row in a column to a value in another row in a column, like they all had to be unique.
Well, not across rows. Then you need to go back to your loops. Across columns, yes. Yeah, of course. Not with interactive grids, though. With tabular forms, yes. And what you can do, though, is compare columns, values in different columns, right? You can, yeah.
If you, let's say, you have total salary for company,
Yeah.
not exceed $1 million.
Yeah, then you need to write your own. I mean, you can.
How can we do it?
I will do that in interactive grids. Good question. I mean, you.
It's on John Snyder's blog.
Well, there you go. Well, ask him.
I'll just say it's complicated. The difference is that we never submit all the value. Tabular forms submit everything, whether you change it or not. So you can loop over everything. Now we only submit the changes, so you can't loop over everything.
All right, hard like software.
It's been discussed on the OTN forums, and I think the discussion is ongoing. So it's an open issue, but we're definitely aware of it.
Hardlikesoftware.com, that's John's blog. Definitely a great resource for all those kind of questions. All right, ready to move on? Yes, so all the items in interactive grids are based on the normal item plugins. So all form items are also interactive grid items. If you have item plugins, you need to modify them a little bit to enable them for interactive grids. But like with tabular forms, we had like our whole set of different item types, right? With interactive grids, it's the same APIs, the same architecture, so the same autocomplete item type would also be available for normal forms.
Can you go back to that other slide real quick?
Oh, sorry. Where did I put it? Oh, here.
Should you touch 3, 5, 7, whatever rows in your IG, and then you go to submit, if one row fails, does it fail all of them, or just the one?
Well, it's not going to submit anything until you all succeed. Yeah, so it's not going to write any of your changes back unless all succeed. All right. Page Designer. So Page Designer was introduced in Apex 5.0, our big feature in 5.0. We had a number of enhancements in 5.1, and we have more planned for 5.2 and beyond. I want to cover a few of those ideas that we have. Of course, we welcome feedback. So if any of this, if anything is missing, if you don't like anything, let me know. One thing, though, that's going to go away in 5.2 is the legacy component view. So this 5.1 release was the last one where that's going to be side by side. Already, some of the newer features like interactive grids and Jet are not supported by the old component view anymore. And in 5.2, the goal is to take it out. So one thing that we get a lot of feedback on is when you're creating a new region, like a chart region or a report region, then you get like all these red arrows and fields that are required. So we would like to make that a little bit more user-friendly. So if you drop in a chart region or create a chart region in your tree, then there will be a what we call a Popover Dialogue that prompts you for those required fields. So rather than having a bunch of red flagged fields in the property editor, you'll just be prompted for what's your query source or what's your display column and value column for a chart, for instance. So all the fields that are currently highlighted in red, they're going to be in this popover. Along with that, we also would like to have a sample data source, similar to what I've just shown in the Create Application Wizard. You create a report region, you create a chart region, and instead of having to pick a table or type in a SQL query, you could just go with a built-in set of sample data. So if your goal is to just lay out your page or get an idea what those components look like, you just drag them in, pick the sample data as a data source, and then you at least get a sense of what that component is going to look like. You can lay out your page, and later on fill in the actual tables and SQL query that you need for your application. And then along with the removal of the old component view, we need to look at a few of our region wizards and the dynamic action wizard. In the page designer, it's a little bit difficult to create a dynamic action right now because when you go into the page designer and you create a dynamic action, you get like this new and you get this true, and there are tons of attributes over on the right, and it's kind of hard to tell what you really need to fill out. In the old component view, we had a wizard that kind of helped you through this a little bit more. So our goal is to have something similar in the page designer. And we have a little bit of a mock-up here. So you click on Create Dynamic Action, and that would open up a dialog. It wouldn't be a wizard. It would be a dialog. You wouldn't go next, next, next. It would be a dialog similar to what we've seen here. So let's say a change event on the P1 job column is the when, the triggering event. And then based on that, you have a condition, like in this case, the client-side condition is this P1 job should have a certain value. Let's say P1 job equals salesman. And if that is true, then show the item commission. And please also create the opposite action, like if the job is not salesman, then hide the commission. So this will make it much easier to create dynamic actions. It's similar to kind of client-side wizard, but we want to avoid having a wizard, so we get this dialog that based on selections above shows the options below. And then longer term, the goal would be to use similar dialogues for some of the other more complex components, like if you create a breadcrumb, for instance. You want to create a breadcrumb on your page, a breadcrumb region, and a breadcrumb entry in shared components. So a similar wizard would then be able to create all the necessary pieces for adding a breadcrumb to your page. So that's dynamic actions. Other UI improvements are mainly cosmetic. We want to make it cleaner. We want to, for example, move the attributes node from the tree on the left into a tab on the right. The attributes node is that little thing that you always find next to your regions. Attributes. And really, this is what's specific to your region type. The main node here, that's always the common region attributes. But then the attributes are what's specific to, say, a chart or a report or an interactive grid. So instead of showing it here on the left in the tree, it's going to move into a tab over here on the right-hand side. So it's easier to toggle, and it's much easier to find because a lot of customers complained about this being hard to figure out. So that should make that easier, a little bit cleaner, and the tree shorter. We also want to have a real zoom. Right now, when you zoom, you kind of go into a specific region, but we actually want to be able to zoom in and out so that this layout view here in the middle becomes a little bit more useful. Right, then other things are mainly cleanup. The messages tab we want to hide when it's not needed. The redesigned component view, which is this one here, which we designed after the old component view, is also probably going to see some enhancements. We figured the shared components may not be needed in here, and some of the other things could also be optimized. So this view will probably also be improved. Other enhancements are mainly here on the property editor side. So right now we have like all these common and advanced and collapse and expand. They're going to go away. The filter here is going to move up into this bar, and we're going to have some easier to use grouping and menu selection for the property editor. And then lastly, a static list of values. Right now, and forever basically, we had the syntax where you do like static colon, and then you have your display and your return values. So we would like to have a nice dialog that lets you actually type in return and display values for static LOVs, and then also enable you to actually convert a static LOV that's defined on your page into a shared one that moves to shared components.
Marc?
Yep.
Will there be a change when creating a LOV item that you can directly create the named LOV in the page designer?
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
So you create a static LOV and then you decide, no, I don't want to have it on my local page, make it a shared component, make it a named LOV.
No, in general the LOV. So if you need a named LOV, not interested in to create a query or a static one, and instantly want to create it as a shared component, but not leaving the page designer at that moment. Because at the moment we are adding a selector,
Yeah.
and if there's no named or value, and you want to always create a named or value, you have to cancel it or to type something like select one from dual, and then go shared component, and then go back to the thing. So that will be directly without taking. Okay.
Yeah, that's what we go. So you don't have to go to shared components, do your thing there, come back, and then pick it. You define the LOV inside the page designer, you give it a name, and it becomes a shared component.
No, no.
He's saying a dynamic element of the values, not a static.
Either way.
Okay.
Either way, should work for both, I would
Okay.
expect. All right, so we talked about the legacy component view. That's going to be removed. There are a number of pages that we need to take a look at that may still link to like some of the old edit pages. Bulk editing of items is something that kind of links off the old component view. So we're going to take a look at a number of those, but the goal is to remove the legacy component view. It's just not practical to maintain two IDEs basically indefinitely. And I think most developers have now moved to Page Designer. And then after 5.2, we also look to have a similar UI like the Page Designer available for editing shared components so that you don't have this break between the UI of Page Designer and editing shared components. All right. Any questions on Page Designer? All right, then let's talk a little bit about remote SQL and REST service consumption. So in a way, they're very much alike. Both features will provide you with new data sources. So instead of picking a local table in your local database, you will be able to have a remote data source, either through a REST API or through this remote SQL data access feature. What that essentially means is that you take your SQL or PL SQL and you send it via ORTS from one ORTS Apex instance to another Oracle database front-ended with ORTS and have that database execute that SQL or PL SQL down one of those three down there. And they then come back with a JSON document through REST back into your Apex instance. And Apex will be able to understand that JSON document and treat it much like a normal result that you would be getting from running a local query in a local database. And so essentially you will be able to build components like charts and reports on remote data sources without really thinking too hard about whether it's remote or local. Of course, there are some performance considerations associated with it, but it works very much like a database link. But instead of being a database link, it's a REST and JSON-based and ORTS-based connection to a remote database. The way it works is you send your SQL, like in my example here, select hello world. You send that over, and then ORTS replies back or executes the query on the other database, comes back with a JSON document which contains the data, as well as a describe of that result set. So down here I have my column name and my column type name and position. So all the information that I need to understand the results coming back in are included in this JSON document. And of course, as a developer, you wouldn't really be confronted with this document. I just want to illustrate the mechanics of this feature. And then based on this, Apex would execute this type of query to build this data parsing profile, which we then would use to build queries against these remote data sources. So a query like this on a select star from AMP would give you something that very much looks like a describe of like a local table. Your column names, your data types, your position. And then with that information, Apex would build a query like this, which goes against that JSON document and returns the result set much like what you would get from a select star from AMP on a local table. So the goal is to enable this type of remote database for jet charts, forms, calendars, reports. And what you basically do is you go to shared components, define this remote data source in shared components, and then as you go through all your wizards, you'll be able to pick this remote data source as the source of your query, of your chart or report.
Does it require 12 too?
On the database side, I'm not sure. It requires ORTs 3.1 and up, so it requires versions of ORTs that are not out yet. But on the database side, I'm not sure. Yeah. I gotta look into it. I don't know, but seems likely that would be required. Right, any questions on remote SQL? So of course the difference between this and this REST service consumption feature that I'm going to talk about now is that with remote SQL, you basically have a connection to another database and you're running whatever you like against that database, whatever you're allowed to run, a select star from AMP, PL/SQL, whatever the database user is allowed to run again in that database that you're connecting to, that's what you can execute. This REST consumption feature is a lot more restrictive in this way, right? Because you are talking directly to REST APIs. The remote SQL was really kind of like a database link replacement. This is talking to REST APIs. You will also add new data sources to your shared components, which we call web sources. They point to a UI of a remote REST API. They're stored in your shared components, and similar to remote SQL, you will be able to select these web sources as your data source when creating reports and charts and forms and so on. And the use cases for this kind of feature are, for example, you want to access data from another database just like you would with the remote SQL feature, but not all databases or not all DBAs would allow you to do that, right? They wouldn't let you run any arbitrary SQL query against that remote database. In many cases, that might be limited, and you only have specific REST endpoints, specific APIs, REST APIs that you can talk to. So if that's the case, then this web source, data source is a much better fit for you to build reports and forms on. You may also want to access other internal systems not based on a Oracle database, right? That just provide a REST API that you can talk to that may or may not provide update capabilities, delete capabilities, but they're there. You can link to them. They return data when you query it, and you will be able to use it as the source for your component. You can also talk to Oracle SAS, Oracle Fusion apps on the cloud, extend those apps with Apex and talk to the published APIs. With Oracle SAS, the benefit is that they actually documented that you can build out a catalog inside Apex of the available data sources, so it will be much more integrated to build reports and forms on those kind of APIs. And then lastly, I think that's kind of like the most common, well, maybe not the most common use case, but what most people understand this REST API or REST service consumption to be. You have some REST data source somewhere on the web that you want to use to augment your application, right? You have like some information from some, I don't know, stock market, whatever, and you want to pull in that data into your Apex application. So your main data sources would still be your local tables, but you want to augment that with third-party data, and you would be able to use this feature to talk to these data sources. And in a way, that's what the REST client assistant does today. So when you look into 5.1, there's a sample application or packaged application called REST client assistant. And that's doing exactly that, right? I have like this example here that I created on Sunday during my demo. What I did here is I created a REST endpoint on my AMP table. And then they use this client assistant to generate this pure SQL snippet and the SQL query down here for me. So you can actually just copy and paste this and build a report or chart or form on this data today. Of course, all of this would be hidden away. You wouldn't be exposed to this, but that's how it would be working under the hood. That's the kind of REST interface that we are planning to build with this feature. So take a look at this REST client assistant, definitely a useful application. And then we'll support, I guess, the usual REST features. You'll be able to pass filters to your REST source to limit the result sets. We can't pull in all the data, so pagination and sorting needs to be happening on the server side of that API, as long as it's supported there. And we'll be able to put, make delete, put, and patch and post requests to update data on the other side. So that's REST. The REST features remote SQL and REST service consumption. Does that make sense? Any questions on that? All right. Yes? The what?
Conversion rates, dollar to your conversion rate. And we have an API outside of our firewall. We have to ping every hour.
Right.
Another database. Is there a way to add a scheduler here that we can do that several times?
Well, you probably would write your own PL SQL to make these calls, right? I guess to some extent you can do that today. You can, with like, again, with, I think the REST service client assistant kind of shows you what kind of PL SQL you would write to make those kind of calls. So you could put that into some job that you, we don't have any specific features that I know of that we would plan to do this on a scheduled basis. So REST workshop, when you look at Apex today, and I mentioned this example on Sunday. So this is our REST full service or REST workshop in Apex today. So you can do things like define a REST API on, in this case, the AMP table. You can test it. You get this kind of data back. That's my employee data. And those definitions here, they are stored inside our own repository in Apex. They're served up through ORTS, but we have a separate repository. Now ORTS introduced its own repository for defining those kind of REST APIs. So in 5.2 our goal is to build a new REST workshop similar to this one, which would run on the ORTS repository, and then have and then migrate your REST definitions in the current repository into the ORTS repository. So it doesn't change much. Same functionality, more functionality because ORTS provides more than what we do here. But we will merge the repositories together. There will only be the ORTS repository. I'm not going to go too much into the packaged applications. I talked about those at length on Sunday. Just want to reiterate, I think they are very useful. They have been in Apex for a long time. Apps like Customer Tracker and ptrack in particular, they are very well and very well made and mature. They're used widely inside Oracle. So if you are in need of a project tracking application, a customer tracking application, both are highly recommended, and some of the others, of course, as well. I used the survey builder on Sunday to do a brief survey on who's using which version of Apex. Very easy to do. You do it on apexoracle.com, and you can survey everyone in the world. So definitely take a look at the packaged applications, and of course, in particular, the sample applications. I've briefly opened up the sample interactive grid application that tells you everything you need to know about interactive grids, how to do validations, how to do infinite scrolling, and all these advanced features. Same with the JET charts. If you want to learn about the JET charts and all the JavaScript APIs and extensions that you can use, take a look at this application. It teaches you a lot about how to do these things. And I also mentioned on Sunday, packaged apps only Workspace. So if all you want to do is run packaged applications, you can create a workspace on your Apex instance, that only lets you do that. Install packaged applications, manage your users, administer and monitor your applications, but it's purely a workspace that lets you install and run packaged apps. And you can do custom packaged applications. So if you have some application that you would like to share and have your entire corporation use, you can actually install those custom packaged apps in instant administration, and then all your workspaces will be able to install a copy of that custom packaged application. We do this internally. We have apexoraclecorp.com, where we have 5,000–6,000 workspaces, organizations in Oracle that use Apex, and you could put applications out there that every group then can use. And then a few other new features that we are looking into doing, working on third-party libraries. We're upgrading jQuery and jQuery UI to the latest versions. This is required for Oracle Jet. We need to and want to adopt the latest version of Oracle Jet, 3x, whichever is going to be the current one by the time we ship. And that requires us to upgrade jQuery and jQuery UI. And that in return means that some functionality no longer works. The old autocomplete, the JS tree, and others need to be updated and migrated to newer components. And if you have your own custom JavaScript that relies on some of these older JavaScript libraries, jQuery migrate and such, you'll have to update those as well. Along with the new version of Jet, we're also going to get new chart types. Oracle Jet is adding a new Gantt chart type, which we plan to include in Apex 5.2, as well as things like the pyramid and box plot charts. And all of these, of course, will be featured in the sample charts application. And we also would like to update our web sheets and interactive reports to use Jet. Right now, they're still using AnyChart. And then Shakib talked at length about UI enhancements in 5.2 on Sunday. So just briefly, a few highlights. Shakib talked about the font Apex, getting high-resolution icons, and a number of changes to template options. That's something that's been asked for frequently, being able to add your own template options to templates and themes without having to unlock the theme, being able to push out changes to, say, presets and defaults to all the regions that make use of these, and being able to have these template options that use checkbox have a null value essentially, so that you don't have two separate template options. So a number of template option enhancements, and we'll get into much more detail on those once they are available. And then lastly, some changes to our forms. They'll get these floating labels, and Shakib provided me with this video that illustrates it. So as you start typing, the labels that are shown in your fields move off to the left corner, get smaller, and you can start typing. So it makes for a cleaner look for your forms. And that's it. Any more questions? When? And back to my safe harbor. Not all of this will make it, so we'll see. No, we're actually not allowed to. We don't really know, but even if we did, all we're allowed to say is, like David was saying on Sunday, within the next 12 months. So there you go. Nothing specific. It's something that's asked for a lot, and we know that we need to do something, but there are no specific features planned just yet. We want to enable what we have for interactive grids and others and improve on it, but no specific features yet.
So there's font Apex HD that's coming with 5.2. Do we actually have to adjust the font icon library, or do we add like an HD icon that it gets like the HD version?
Shakib still here? Did he run out? I don't know. I think it's probably going to be similar to this switch from Font Awesome to Font Apex, where once you upgrade it, you're able to just pick a different font, right? And then they share the same name. So automatically you kind of get the nicer Font Apex icons. I would imagine that being similar in 5.2, where you pick like the HD version of the font Apex, and you get the new icons. All right, thanks everyone, and enjoy the party.